Neil Renton, you're the head teacher of Harrogate Grammar School, and I think you've been in post, is it about 4 or 5 years now?
5 years.
5 years now.
2019 when I became appointed as the head teacher, but I've worked at the school now for 10 years.
So that meant you kind of took over the reins, really, of what the school was about. And we've come together today, really, to talk about, you've almost like documented and tried to look at the sort of, what you got right and what you maybe got wrong during that time. So can we turn the clock back then? So when you started the role, what was it like then to become the headmaster of the school? Because you were already at the school, weren't you?
Yes, that's a really good question, and actually that's what the first chapter of this book is actually about. So when I became the head teacher, you go through that process in your career where you've strived to achieve that role, you're appointed into that position, and then suddenly you're walking down the corridor, and I remember thinking, gosh, I really feel the weight of this school. And it reminded me of I don't know if it's a North Yorkshire or Yorkshire phrase, which is, if you carry a calf for every day of its life, you can carry a cow. And that was really what it was like working at the school, thinking, I've got to get used to working with that weight of responsibility of 2,000 children, a huge parental community, at one of the highest performing schools in the country. And that's my privilege to lead that school, but also my responsibility. And that's really where this book really came out of, in terms of those experiences that I was having as a new school leader, new head teacher. How can I learn from them? And I found writing about them really helpful to me personally. And then just over time, I started to do some blogs, and it gradually grew. Pandemic came, pressures of Ofsted, and the story became more interesting. So I just wanted to tell that story to try and help me understand, but then also help new leaders.
And what was your approach from the start? Since you were already in the school, were there things that you saw that you wanted to do that you maybe couldn't have done previously? Did you come in with the view thinking, right, I need to kind of bed in, see what's going, see what the role's about, and then look at change? Or did you have sort of some set ideas really from day one?
So I was really lucky and privileged here in that the culture of the school is so positive and so strong, and embedded this kind of culture of excellence. And I always say to the previous head teacher that our role is really as custodians of that culture to look after it for the next generation. So I didn't come into a school that needed that kind of significant change, but what I came into was a school of very, very high expectations, and a school where trust is really important between parents and teaching staff, trust with colleagues. So for me it was really about how do I establish my profile after a very high performing previous head teacher, how do I look after this culture? And then I suppose all those other challenges then started to come into the school. But I was lucky in a way that I'd already got my kind of established in the school and in the community to some extent, and then just kind of layered on top of that over those early years of being a head teacher.
And was that the pressure then to keep up the standards then of grammar school? Because without doubt it is one of the schools that people want, aspire to want to come to.
Yeah, I think my early time in the school it's always about trying to do our best for the students and provide that care and support, but also achieve those outcomes for the students. So it was very much about trying to maintain those standards, and then I suppose those external pressures of the Ofsted that we knew was coming around the corner. We hadn't been inspectors as a school since 2011, so we knew that I knew that in my early years of being a head here that I had to face that challenge, and that knowledge at times that was kind of a backing track of worry to the early phases of my headship. But then we knew it was coming, so we just worked and prepared for that.
And is Ofsted literally a knock on the door on the morning, then they come?
So the day before.
They give you a whole day
the day before.
To prepare.
So the phone call comes at 10 o'clock, and it came exactly at 10 o'clock, and then you have the rest of the day, and then they come in the morning. We were challenged on that day because we had parents' evening on the evening before they came, so it was really difficult actually to brief staff because staff finished 3:30, then they went into parents' evening at 4 o'clock.
And did you get much sleep that night?
That whole week, that period of a couple of days is a really intense period for any school. It's as you're aware of the challenges of Ofsted. It's a really rigorous and worrying process in terms of what schools go through.
But the result was good, wasn't it? That's the main thing to say from there.
Yeah.
So your book then, it's titled Leadership, isn't it?
It's new school leader, what now? And that title, what now, comes from you strive for that position, you then appointed to it, and then you think, what do I actually do now? Now that I'm in that position, what is that like? And the book is structured over 4 different parts to try and deal with that question. So the first part is about the self-doubts that you have as a new leader, and about the challenges that you face, the basics of leadership, and then kind of culture. And I think that structure, actually, not just for school leaders, but anybody in a leadership position or new to leadership, that kind of 4-part structure, that's really things I think that you need to think about as a new school or a leadership in any kind of industry. And
it's leadership as against management, isn't it? So you sort of have both roles.
Yeah, so this book's really about setting the pace, the direction. How do you have the professional will to drive the school forward, but also the kind of other features of leaders about humility and empathy, of working with people, building trust, building a culture. And I think those are the kind of unique bits of leadership. And there's always a spot in leadership where you know that teams are working together, cultures are working together, and you're striving towards a goal. And our goal as a school has always been this excellence for all, and everything that we do comes back to that. But what are the strategies and the tactics that we can use to achieve that ultimate objective that we're working towards it? So the book's actually it's 49 different chapters, and I played actually with the idea of them being lessons, but there are 49 chapters around leadership, and then there's an extra bonus kind of thing at the end, which is the 50th, and they're all really exploring different themes of leadership, but things that I experienced over the first 3 years of that role. So I tried to write during the most challenging of experiences, the happy experiences, just to capture those moments, and then tell that story, reflect on that, ask some questions, so that people reading it's kind of a mixture of, it's kind of creative non-fiction in a way of telling the story, then a little bit of conceptual leadership material, then some reflective questions, so that anybody reading it can say, well, actually, how would I respond in that situation, and what would I do? And I'm hoping that anyone reading it who is new to leadership would kind of, in that role, reading it, think, well, I can get something from this book, actually. I'm going through a similar set of experiences.
And do you think, from a leadership point of view, schools are kind of maybe different to a normal, business environment, where you've just got kind of one group of people that you are leading, but as the head in a school, you're kind of leading both the teachers as well as the pupils themselves. So does that make it even more complicated then to be a leader?
So I think with leadership, for me it's such a privilege, in that I always find every day so academically and intellectually challenging, and that no day is the same, and that you've got the teachers, the support staff, the parents, the governors, the students, and all of the complexity of different interactions and relationships, planning for the future, dealing with an issue in the moment, dealing with a macro issue, dealing with a micro issue. And I think that's one of the joys of leadership, and something to really embrace, is that you are dealing at many, many different levels. And I think that's part of effective leadership, is that versatility to move between those different perspectives and positions, so that you can look after the people that you serve, and ultimately try to remember what you're doing and why you're doing it and where you're going. So yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, is leadership.
And the environment that you're in is sort of, I suppose the school's is forever in the news, isn't it, for one thing or another. You know, in your time in education, if you like, have you seen a significant change? You know, you obviously have to work in a framework, perhaps from, you know, the government. Obviously, the government dictates to a large degree what schools do, but they don't dictate the culture and sort of, as you say, the detail of what goes on. And you've also got an academy, you know, that you need to also work with. Does that kind of give you sort of too many masters or the right number of masters, if you like, to do the job?
So the academy aspect, and particularly working we're part of a multi-academy trust, the Red Kite Learning Trust, that's incredibly powerful in terms of what we can achieve as a community of schools there. And part of the reason I think the school is so effective is that we start with the position of looking outwards rather than looking inwards. So we're always working with other schools, and it pays us for the education of every child to be highly, highly effective in Harrogate and in the local area. So we want to work with other schools, and that's part of the benefit of a multi-academy trust, that you're dialing into all that wisdom of other schools and other cultures that you can then feed back into your own school. So I think the academy status of the school and the Red Kite Learning Trust is a very, very powerful aspect of our school. The wider political context that we're in, certainly throughout the pandemic, it was a really rough time in education in terms of how the political leadership took place. And you know, you can give so many examples of free school meals being there, then not being there, results are going to work in one way and then there's an algorithm that doesn't work. We wearing face masks, we're not wearing face masks. It was U-turn after U-turn after U-turn. After the pandemic, we're now in this phase really of a little bit of unknown. We're not really sure where we're going politically with education. It just feels like we're waiting for this kind of next election. You don't hear as much in the news apart from the strikes, and now the strikes have kind of come to an end. It seems to have gone very quiet in terms of what's happening in education. So I'm hoping in the next couple of years that education will work back to the forefront, and we'll have some really good policy direction in terms of funding for schools. That's probably been the biggest thing that we faced in recent years, and certainly the last year, is the funding crisis in school is very real, and it's had a massive impact. We've spent the year trying to manage that in the school.
So just coming back to the book. No, that was really very interesting. No, it was very, very interesting. But on the book, if I was a potential head teacher just looking at maybe applying for a role, what kind of advice would you be giving, or what would you be saying to them that they need to demonstrate?
So if you were, I would be really excited about that, because less and less people are coming forward and saying that they want to be head teachers, and more people are leaving headship, which is a really worrying situation. So I would really encourage you to read this book. But I would be saying to you that to really think about what leadership is about. And for me, it's always been about that professional will and drive to make a difference. And you're trying to make, as a head teacher, a difference on the broadest scale that you can as a teacher for a whole school and a whole community. And then to think how you want to be perceived and how you want to behave as a leader. And for me, in the culture here, we want to lead with empathy, we want to lead with humility, so that we listen carefully and stick to that professional will of where we're going, but do it in a way where we're communicating effectively with people are clear what we're trying to achieve, and actually doing what we're setting out to do, which I can see on my wall behind us. We're trying to achieve great outcomes for young people, but we want our students to leave here and go off and make a profound contribution to the society in which they live. And what better job is there that you can influence a community of staff and a community of children that can hopefully go on and be the next leaders in the country. And we always say, as a really great quote in education, that the education of today is the economy of tomorrow. And I think that's a really refreshing and sobering thought as a head teacher, that it's really important that we get this right and we do this well, not just for the present of these children, but for the future lives and the future lives of future children. And that's exciting stuff.